Welcome to lecture series on the course Foundation of Mathematics. This is lecture 10 and in this lecture we will be discussing the notion of pairwise disjoint family of sets and power sets. So first we discuss the notion of pairwise disjoint family of sets. Given a family of sets indexed by a certain set, we call it as a disjoint family if the intersection is empty, that is, if there is no common element in each of the sets in the given family. So we have the definition for that. So suppose we are given the family of this sets A alpha is coming from this this index set capital lambda, then the family is said to be disjoint if the intersection of A alpha is empty, that is same as saying there is no common element in this family. Further, it is said to be pairwise disjoint if every pair in this family is disjoint. Every distinct pair in this given family is disjoint. So that is same as saying for any alpha and beta in the index set capital lambda, with the condition that alpha is not equal to beta, that should implies that A alpha intersection A beta is empty. So here are some geometrical idea of disjoint and pairwise disjoint set. Let us consider this example first. You consider this box as a universal set and this three sets as a family of a set. So these are the subsets of your universal set. Let me name this as A, B and C. We are going to check whether these are disjoint or these are pairwise disjoint. So first thing I will be checking for disjoint. So if you can see that there is a common element between these three sets, since it's a very low number of sets, we can geometrically look at the idea of this disjoint and pairwise disjoint sets and we can extend it to arbitrarily any elements of any number of elements. So you can see through this Venn diagram that this has got a common element. This is a common part. So you can see that there is at least one element which is common to A, B as well as C, and therefore they are not pairwise. This family is not pairwise disjoint because the intersection is not empty. So therefore I can say that this is non-disjoint family. Now next thing we need to check whether they are pairwise disjoint. So to check whether they are pairwise disjoint, we need to check whether each distinct pair in this family is non-empty or empty. So if I check with A and B, then there is an intersection. This part is the intersection of A and B, so that there is a non-empty intersection. If I check with A and C, then this is the intersection part, and if I check with B and C, that this is the intersection part. So you see that every pair is non-empty and therefore this is also non-pairwise disjoint family. Okay, so this is neither disjoint nor pairwise disjoint. So now if I come to this family of a set, example 2, if I consider this as a universal set and these are some sets, this circle denotes the subsets of this universal set. Fine, I want to check whether this is disjoint or this is pairwise disjoint. The first question I need to ask whether these are disjoint, and it is trivially true because you can see that there is no common region between these sets. So that means there is no intersection in this set. You can very easily see that the element lying over here, you can very easily see that there is no common element for this family of sets. So therefore this is disjoint. It is true that it is disjoint, but is it pairwise disjoint? So can you see that every pair of this family of set is empty? Not true, because if you can find at least one pair, that is at least two sets whose intersection is non-empty, then you can very easily then you can see by definition that this set is not pairwise disjoint. So here you can see that this pair is non-empty pair, and therefore this is not non-pairwise disjoint. So I hope the definition of disjoint and pairwise disjoint family of set is clear to you all. Now, one important things that I want you to observe here for this pairwise disjoint. See, for any alpha comma beta in the index set, we say that whenever alpha is not equal to beta, A alpha intersection A beta is equal to empty. In that case, the given set is pairwise disjoint. So we say that it is pairwise disjoint whenever alpha is not equal to beta, implies A alpha is not equal to A beta, A alpha intersection A beta is equal to empty. Now, why this is important? Because this says that we are actually considering the two distinct pair in the universal set. Because if they are equal, then you are considering both the sets which are same, and therefore the intersection will never be empty unless the given set is empty itself. Okay, so this can be actually put in the form of implication, that is the family is said to be pairwise disjoint if for any alpha comma beta lying in the index set, if alpha is not equal to beta, then A intersection beta, A alpha intersection A beta is empty. So this is the definition of pairwise disjoint, and in fact this can be help us to show that something is not pairwise disjoint. We can the negation of this statement. Okay, so if alpha is not equal to beta, but still the intersection is non-empty. Or in fact, if you want to show that they are pairwise disjoint, we can show that the contrapositive of this statement is true. That is, whenever A alpha intersection A beta is not empty, then we should have alpha is equal to beta. That's also the definition of pairwise disjoint. So there are different ways of expressing the same statement in mathematics. So we will see some examples of this disjoint and pairwise disjoint family of set. The first exercise, show that if a family of a set is pairwise disjoint, then it is disjoint. This basically says that the family being pairwise disjoint implies that it is disjoint. So pairwise disjoint term is more superior than disjoint, and it is very easy to show that this is true. So suppose I have, so I am producing a proof for this. Let me start with a family which is pairwise disjoint. So let A alpha be the collection, be a family of set, so this is belonging to lambda, be pairwise disjoint family. I need to show that it is disjoint. So to show that it is disjoint, so first I will write down the definition. So that is, for every alpha beta in lambda such that alpha not equal to beta, this implies that A alpha intersection A beta is empty. A alpha and A beta corresponding to alpha not equal to beta for every alpha and beta in lambda, they are disjoint. Now we want to show, so this is what we assume, is true by the definition. So our claim is that this family is disjoint. So we want to show that actually A intersection A alpha, intersection of A alpha where alpha is varying over the index set is empty. So I prove this using contradiction. In fact, you can very easily observe this through definition, but to produce a proof for this we need to make use of contradiction. So if not, then there exists X in U such that where U is a universal set. I believe that each of this A alpha is a subset of U, and so we have a universal set for this, such that X belongs to intersection of A alpha where alpha is varying over this. By the definition of this, this means that X is in each A alpha. So we write it in this way. This conveys that X belongs to every element in this family. So now, if in particularly alpha beta is in A, so therefore X also belongs to A alpha and X also belongs to A beta. Don't get confused with the notation here. This alpha I have used to convey that X is in each of this A alpha, and here this some notation again to show that the distinct pair is empty. So with this definition we would have this, because alpha and beta is coming from this capital lambda, and for each element of this lambda X is in that corresponding A. So I have X is in A alpha and X is in A beta, so I can say that X belongs to A alpha intersection A beta. So this says that A alpha intersection A beta is empty. That's a contradiction to the fact that the given family is a pairwise disjoint set. So whenever the given family is pairwise disjoint, then it has to be disjoint. So always remember this fact. So if you want to show that something is disjoint and you can produce the proof for pairwise disjoint, that is enough to say that it is disjoint. So the contrapositive of this would be non-disjoint. So if any family is non-disjoint, if it is not disjoint, then it is not going to be non-pairwise disjoint, not pairwise disjoint. It is not going to be a pairwise disjoint. Okay, so this is in the nutshell we need to know while discussing the theory of this disjoint and pairwise disjoint set. We would take some example. Here we have Fk as minus k comma k for each kn in A. So this is the family of set. The question is, what we need to show is that this this family is pairwise disjoint and hence it has to be disjoint. So how do we show that this is a pairwise disjoint? So as I said, I will be using the contrapositive way to show that something is pairwise disjoint. So what we do is that, okay, the contrapositive I have stated over here. Whenever A intersection beta is non-empty, then you should be able to prove that alpha is equal to beta if the given set is pairwise disjoint. So I want to show that this is pairwise disjoint. So let m comma n belongs to this set of natural number. So if the correspondence intersection, that is Fm intersection Fn, is empty, then I should be able to show that the only possibility for this m is equal to n. Then only I can conclude that this family of set is pairwise disjoint. So we have if this is non-empty. If this is non-empty, then I should be able to show that m is equal to, only possibility for m and n is that m is equal to n, which says that the given family of set is pairwise disjoint. So, if this is true, then we should be that is, what is Fm? To the definition, if m is natural number, it is m comma minus m intersection n comma minus n is non-empty. Now, you can see that these two sets are the sets containing only two elements, and you should be able to assert a condition when these two sets is going to be non-empty. So, that is very simple. If m is equal to 1, I mean this to be non-empty, this set to be non-empty, this intersection to be non-empty, either of this element have to be equal to either of the element over here. So, that is, this m have to be either equal to n or minus n, or minus m have to be equal to n or minus n. In fact, both would give to the same possibilities. So, this should implies either m is equal to n or m is equal to minus n, right. So, I need to show that this m is equal to n. So, to show that this statement is true, I mean to show that m is equal to n, I should eliminate the case that m is equal to minus n. So, I should get some contradiction if m is equal to minus n. So, that means if m is equal to minus n, we would see what can happen. So, this would implies that m plus n is equal to 0. Can this be ever possible for m and n natural number? It is in fact a positive integer, and so that the sum will never be equal to 0. So, which is not true. As m and n belongs to n, and therefore, the only possibility among this or is this m is equal to n, hence m is equal to n. So, we have proved that this family is a pairwise disjoint or pairwise disjoint. And this we have attained by contrapositive of the definition. Fine. So, like this we can show that something is pairwise disjoint using the contrapositive of the definition. Next, we talk about the notion of power sets. Given a set, we talk about all the subset of that particular sets, and when we collect this subsets, we call it as a power sets of that particular set. So, that is a formal definition. For a set S, the power set of S is defined to be the family of all subsets of S denoted by P of S. That is the standard notation. Sometimes some author used subscript P instead of simple P, instead of this italic P. So, P of S mathematically, it's a collection of set A such that A is a subset of S. So, here we are collecting all the subsets of S. So, the first and the very trivial exercise that one should think about is that, will this P of A will ever be empty? The answer is no, it is never going to be empty, it will always be non-empty. The reason is very simple. We know that empty set is a subset of any set. So, given any set A, empty set is a subset of A. So, therefore, empty will always belongs to this P of A. So, no matter what set you are considering, even if it is an empty set is a subset of empty set. So, empty set will always be a part of this power set of A, and therefore, this says that P of A will never be empty. And what is the power set of empty set? I just now answered. If we have empty set, the only subset of empty set is empty, and therefore, this is a singleton set, empty. It is not empty set. It is just like a box contained in a empty box is in the empty box, is lying under the empty box. A very important theorem, one could say, that regarding the number of regarding the finite number of elements in A. So, if A contains finite elements say n, then its power set will contain 2 raised to n elements. So, how do we show this? Since this n is varying over some finite natural number, we can use the principle of mathematical induction. So, to start with principle of mathematical induction, we should have a statement in terms of n. So, what is the statement that you have? So, proof for this, I would consider it as P of n. P of n, okay, if this is becoming a problem with the notation, if it's clashing with the notation of a power set, I would use some other notation. I'll take it as S of n. This is a statement which says that if cardinality of A is equal to n, I use this notation to denote the number of elements. This is used only when, this is used to show, this denotes the number of elements in A. Then cardinality of P of A is equal to 2 raised to n. This is what we need to show. So, we use principle of mathematical induction to prove this. So, we would follow the steps. By the way, this is this we are proving for n, which is varying over the natural number, as well as you can have a number of elements in A to be 0. So, you are also considering 0. So, 0 is the first element in the row. So, if you follow the step, first step says that you have to prove the result true for first element in the sequence of those row that which we want to. So, here this is starting from this is varying, this n is varying over the whole number. So, this whole number start from 0. So, you have to show that the statement holds true for n equal to 0. Second step, you have to assume that it is true for any whole number, and in the third step, with this assumption, we have to show that it is true for the next natural number. So, in this way, we are proving for all the natural number, because we are starting with 0. By the step 2 and step 3, if you show that step 3 is true from step 2, then in that way you are proving for the next integer, that is 0 plus 1. So, that means you have proved for 1. Now, from 1 you are proving for 1 plus 1, that is true, and it goes on. So, that is the idea of principle of mathematical induction, and that is used most of the time when we discuss the results on set of natural number or set of integers. So, step 1 of induction, I would consider n equal to 0, and I would show that this statement S of 0 holds for that. So, in that case, the cardinality of A is equal to 0, that is A is an empty set. So, therefore, the only element that lies, the only element that is a subset of empty set is the set itself, the empty set itself. So, the cardinality of this A, you can see that there is only one element in this set, that is 1, therefore, this is 1, which can be treated as 2 raised to 0, and therefore, we have shown that S of 0 is true. So, we have proved the result for the first one. If you want, you can also go for n equal to 1 and show that this is true, but I would skip that step, and I will go for step 2, when that comes under step 1 itself, n equal to 1. So, step 2, we assume that the result is true for some k lying under this set, n union 0 under whole number. So, assume S of k is true for k in the set, okay, for any k. So, that is same as saying what would be S of k. So, that is if cardinality of A is equal to K, then the cardinality of P of A will be same as 2 raised to K. And so using this we would show that S of K plus 1 is true. So step 3, S of K plus 1, okay, you show that S of K plus 1 is true. And what is it? That is to prove that if cardinality of A is equal to, or I would take some other set because A is, we are using it again and again. So I would take, so for any set with basically it says that for any set with K plus element, its power set should contain 2 raised to K plus 1 element. So if cardinality of B is equal to K plus 1, then cardinality of P of B is 2 raised to K plus 1. Okay. So what I'll do here is that I will split this B into set of K elements and 1 element. So since it has K, exactly K plus 1 element, I can list them from 1 to K plus 1. So I would write it down in this way. So let B be the first element, I will call it as E1, second element I will call it as E2, E3, and this goes on till Ek, and the last element is Ek plus 1. So there are K plus 1 elements in this B. So what I will do is that I will split, see this result basically the assumption, first step 2 basically says that given any set containing K element, then its power set will contain 2 raised to K element. So I will split this set into the set containing K element, and we would get the proof for this B. We would show that the element in P of B is 2 raised to K plus 1. So what I will do is that let C be the set E1, E2, and this goes on till Ek. I am taking this C because this C will contain K elements, and I'll be able to use the assumption. Now since the number of element in C is K, the number of subsets that we will generate is 2 raised to K, and so the cardinality of power set of C is 2 raised to K. And so we have this, since cardinality of C is equal to K, this implies that the cardinality of P of C is equal to 2 raised to K. This is from our hypothesis of principle of induction, that is from step 2, which says that any sets containing K element, the number of power subsets it's going to have is 2 raised to K. And through this we would observe also that the number of subsets of B is 2 raised to K plus 1. So how do we do that? One thing you can note down that this B is union of C and a singleton E K plus 1. So note that B is equal to C union singleton Ek plus 1. Now therefore every subset of C is going to be a subset of B, and so we have 2 raised to K such sets. So first we get 2 raised to K sets from this C, as every subset of C is a subset of C. Now only subsets of B which we have not considered are those sets which do not contain this element Ek plus 1, because Ek plus 1 is not in this set. But now we can easily construct all the possible sets of B containing Ek plus 1 by just inserting this Ek plus 1 to all the subsets of C. For example, if I want a singleton set Ek plus 1, I just insert this Ek plus 1 to the empty set which is lying over here, and so we get all now all the singleton set. E1, E2, which are already in power set of C, as well as now we have EK singleton EK plus 1. The doubly sets would be formed from all the singleton sets which we have in a power set of C, and this it goes on. So therefore we get, I mean, the only set which we had not considered over here is those which do not contain EK plus 1, and that can be formed by inserting this EK plus 1 to all the subsets of C, and we have 2 raised to k such sets, and therefore this 2 raised to k sets comes from this point, that is by inserting EK plus 1 to all the subsets of C, and therefore the total would become, total number of subsets of B would become 2 raised to k plus 2 raised to k, that is 2 into 2 raised to k, which is same as 2 raised to k plus 1. So this is the idea which we use to construct a proof for this. So we write down the proof. So since this is true, so every subset of C is a subset of B. So now how do we put this idea here? So any subset of B either contain EK plus 1 or does not, or it does not contain EK plus 1. Right? And so if it contains EK plus 1, if it do not contain EK plus 1, then it's a subset of C also, and so therefore we should have 2 raised to k such set. And so that we will write down. First step, if a subset of B do not contain EK plus 1, then it is a subset of C, and so we have, thus we have 2 raised to k such subsets of B. Of B. Now the case when it do not have if it has EK plus 1, if subset of B have EK plus 1, then by this idea that set have been formed through the subset of C just by inserting that EK plus 1 in any of the subset of C. So then that set subset is formed by including this EK plus 1 in one of the, so this is for one such subset, one of the subset of C. Okay, and so since there are 2 raised to k such set, we would we can construct 2 raised to k such sets. Okay, so B has 2 raised to k subsets containing e raised to e of k plus 1. So total number of subsets of B are now 2 raised to k plus 2 raised to k, that is sum of this total number of subsets that we have obtained, that is 2 into 2 raised to k, which is same as 2 raised to k plus 1. This shows that P of k plus 1 is true, and therefore by principle of, this is S of k plus 1 by our notation of statement s of k plus 1 is true, this implies that s of n is true by principle of mathematical induction. So in this way we prove the result using the idea of combinatorics. So thank you for watching this video and have a nice day ahead.